The morning rain hit the pavement in soft rhythms as Malcolm Reed stepped out of the sleek black sedan and stared at the large storefront, bearing the name he had built from the ground up, Reed and Harvest Superstores, one of the nation's fastest-growing retail chains. But today, he wasn't stepping in as the CEO who graced business magazines and shocked boardrooms with bold, unpredictable plays. Today he wore a faded hoodie, rugged jeans, a baseball cap, and work boots. Not even his executive assistants knew he had flown in. It had been years since he had walked into one of his own stores unannounced and completely unrecognized, and something in his spirit told him it was time. Malcolm was a brooding, sharp-minded man who had climbed his way out of a childhood filled with eviction notices, cold nights, and a mother who sometimes cried into dishwater because the bills outweighed the groceries. He had promised himself two things. He would build something powerful, and he would never forget where he came from. But power has a strange way of creating distance, and success, massive success, often builds invisible walls. Today, he wanted to break one down. He pushed open the glass doors and stepped inside. The warm scent of baked bread from the deli section swept toward him, mixed with the sterile tang of floor polish. The store buzzed with morning life, customers pushing carts, cashiers greeting early shoppers, stockers arranging displays. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Malcolm had come here because anonymous reports from an employee hotline had raised concerns, mistreatment, bullying, and something that felt like deep-rooted neglect from local management. His executives brushed it off with polished reports and rehearsed explanations. But Malcolm trusted people more than paperwork. The truth hid in the small moments, the unseen corners, and that's where he was headed. He walked past aisles until he reached the back of the store, where the fluorescent lights flickered with a faint electric buzz. There, tucked between the supply closet and the loading dock, he heard something, soft, muffled sobbing. At first he paused, unsure if he was hearing correctly. Then a faint, scraping sound followed, like someone wiping their face with trembling hands. Malcolm followed the sound and turned the corner. There, crouched on an overturned mop bucket, was an older man in a worn janitor's uniform. Gray streaks in his beard, shoulders slumped, eyes red and wet. His name tag read, Thomas. A mop leaned against the wall beside him, and a half-cleaned spill sat drying on the tile. It wasn't the image of a man having a rough day. It was the image of someone quietly breaking. Malcolm spoke gently. "Sir, are you all right?" Thomas jolted, quickly wiping his face with his sleeve. Embarrassed. I'm fine. Sorry. Didn't know anyone was around." His voice cracked like overstressed wood. Malcolm took a step closer. "It's okay. You don't have to hide it." Something in his tone, steady, warm, grounding, made Thomas sigh deeply, as if releasing a breath he'd held for months. Finally, Thomas whispered, "It's just been a rough morning, rough week, rough life, I suppose." Malcolm didn't rush him. Silence can be a bridge. After a long pause, Thomas said, "My son's in the hospital. Heart complications. He's only 19. His hands shook. "I used to work 2 jobs, but after my wife passed, things got harder. Medical bills kept piling up. And this job," he swallowed, "this job's all I've got. But they cut my hours. Manager barely talks to me unless it's to scold me. Yesterday, he told me my performance is slipping. If I lose this job—" He stopped. The tremor in his voice said the rest. Malcolm felt a slow burn rise in his chest, a mix of anger, sadness, and the bitter sting of recognition. He knew this story in 100 different forms. He had lived pieces of it before success came knocking. He wanted to shout, to demand who had treated this man with such callousness, but instead he said, "You shouldn't be going through this alone." Thomas gave a tired, small smile. "Thank you, son, but I've lived long enough to know kindness usually stops at words." Malcolm felt that line like a blade. He helped Thomas up, steadying the man with a firm hand. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. 16 years, Thomas said. "Even before the chain expanded, before the fancy new branding, back when the old owner used to visit and shake our hands. Things changed after that. Corporate got bigger. People like me got smaller." Malcolm's jaw tightened. He knew he had to see how deep the problem went. He helped Thomas to the break room, grabbed him a bottle of water from the vending machine, and sat across from him. "Who's your manager?" Malcolm asked. "Mr. Dalton?" Thomas shook his head. "Don't get me wrong. He likes the customers, but he treats the workers like machines, especially the older ones. He doesn't know what I'm going through. Doesn't care." Malcolm nodded slowly. He felt something within him shift, like a storm gathering purpose. He wasn't just here to observe anymore. He had seen enough to act. But first, he had to understand the full truth. He thanked Thomas, assured him things would get better, then walked straight to the floor manager's office. He knocked once, then opened the door. Dalton sat behind a desk, scrolling through his phone, barely glancing up. "This better be quick," he muttered. "I'm busy." Malcolm closed the door behind him. "Are you the manager here?" "Obviously," Dalton sighed. "What do you want? If it's about a complaint, go to customer service." Malcolm stepped closer. "I'm here about Thomas, the janitor." Dalton rolled his eyes. "What now? He's slow, always emotional. I swear, that man's a walking liability. If he cries one more time during a shift, I might just—" Malcolm slammed his palm on the desk. Not loud, but firm enough to make Dalton jump. "You will not finish that sentence," Malcolm said, his voice low and commanding, in a way that years of boardroom authority had sharpened. Dalton blinked, confused. Who are you?" Malcolm leaned in. "Someone who believes the way you treat people matters." Dalton scoffed. "Look, he's old. He's struggling. I don't have time to babysit. If he can't keep up, he'll be replaced soon enough." Malcolm stared at him in a long, cold silence. Then he said, "Interesting. I'd like to see how you speak when you realize who you're talking to." Dalton frowned, irritated. "What's that supposed to—" But Malcolm turned and walked out without another word. He needed to breathe before the anger erupted. He needed to think before he revealed himself. He needed to make sure when justice arrived, it would be loud, clear, and unforgettable. Because the truth was this: Malcolm Reed had built this company to lift people, not crush them. And today, he was going to remind everyone of that, starting with the man who cried in the shadows after giving 16 years of loyalty. The storm was only beginning. By noon, Malcolm had seen enough. He walked the aisles disguised as a regular employee, and what he witnessed stoked the fire inside him. Dalton dismissing workers, belittling a young cashier for a small error, ignoring a mother asking for help finding baby formula, and scolding Thomas again for wasting time. Every move the manager made revealed the kind of leadership Malcolm despised: cold, arrogant, convenience-driven leadership that sucked the humanity out of workplaces. Malcolm gathered the entire staff on the main floor. His voice carried authority even without a title. "Everyone, can I have your attention for a moment?" people murmured. Glancing around in confusion, Dalton stomped over. "Hey, you don't get to call staff meetings. What do you think you're—" Malcolm raised a hand, and Dalton instantly fell silent, confused by the magnetic power behind the gesture. Malcolm reached up slowly and pulled the cap from his head, then the hoodie. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "No way, that's Malcolm Reed. That's the CEO." Another dropped a clipboard in shock. Dalton's face drained of color. Malcolm stepped forward, voice steady as granite. "Good afternoon, everyone. I didn't announce my visit because I wanted to see the truth, not the polished version presented to corporate." Eyes widened. Hearts raced. Dalton swallowed hard. Sir, I didn't know." "You shouldn't have to know," Malcolm said sharply. "Respect shouldn't depend on status." Workers murmured in agreement. Malcolm scanned the room until he found Thomas standing hesitantly near the back. Eyes wet again, this time from disbelief. Malcolm extended a hand. "Thomas, come forward." Thomas stepped slowly, trembling. Malcolm placed a hand on his shoulder. "For 16 years, this man has held this store together through storms, understaffing, personal loss, and long nights. He deserves honor, support, and compassion, not mistreatment or threats." Dalton's lips quivered. "Sir, it's just that—" Malcolm cut him off. "Dalton, you've forgotten what leadership means. I saw how you treated the staff. I heard how you spoke to Thomas. I watched you ignore customers while lecturing good employees." He stepped closer until their faces were inches apart. "And I don't tolerate leaders who break people." Dalton stammered, "Please, I can do better." "You've had years," Malcolm said. "Your employment ends today." Gasps erupted. Dalton stumbled backward, pleading, but Malcolm's tone stayed unshakably firm. "Security will escort you to retrieve your things. And before you leave, I expect you to apologize to every worker you disrespected, starting with Thomas." Dalton turned to Thomas, eyes lowered. I'm sorry, truly." Thomas nodded gently, not out of pity, but strength. Once Dalton was escorted out, Malcolm addressed the entire staff. "This store will not crumble under poor leadership. Starting today, there will be new training, new support systems, and new management, real management. And Thomas," he turned, smiling softly, "your hours are being restored, your pay is being raised, and the company will fully cover your son's medical expenses." Thomas dropped to his knees, sobbing into his hands. Malcolm knelt beside him and pulled him into a strong embrace. "Your family," he whispered. "You've always been." The crowd burst into applause, loud, emotional, heartfelt. Some workers cried, some hugged. For the first time in years, hope filled the building like sunlight, breaking through storm clouds. Malcolm stood and spoke one final time. "Let this be a reminder. We rise together, or not at all. Kindness is strength. Humanity is power. And no one should ever suffer in silence within the walls of a company meant to uplift." The room erupted again. And as Malcolm walked out of the store, the employees followed him with renewed spirits, inspired and ready to rebuild. Thomas walked beside him, shoulders lifted, eyes bright. For the first time in a long time, he felt seen.